Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And She Thrived is here to provide you with the tools that are so much needed when going through a divorce. We want you to know that you are not alone and that you are supported, and to provide you with these resources so that you may become more empowered and a better version of yourself. We want to hear from you and build community with you. So please do let us know in the comments how we might better serve you. Now enjoy the next episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everybody to And She Thrived, and welcome to Naimah Abraham. Welcome, marhaban Naimah.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
So we are really delighted to have Naimah here with us today. She is a Haitian American Muslim writer, and her creative approach to storytelling addresses vulnerable and controversial topics. She seeks to bring a compassionate perspective to some of the difficulties of the human experience. Author of the Amazon bestseller, In the Belly of the Whale, year 2020, Surviving Divorce, COVID-19, and Black Lives Matter. Her community work seeks to help people heal from relational trauma, find deeper purpose, and discover their gifts. After her divorce, she started an initiative to encourage divorced and grieving women to heal with dignity by providing self-care packages, and also to enable them to feel beautiful and loved, even while grappling with a difficult season in their lives. Naimah has a bachelor's in psychology and is a mother of two. So I am really, really excited about having Naimah with us today. I spent quite a bit of time looking at your IG profile, all of your posts, and I was really, really taken. And to be honest with you, when I looked at your Instagram profile, the thing that just popped into my head was that, oh my God, like everything that she produces is beauty. It's all beautiful. And so I really mean that from the heart, that like when it comes to even your handwriting, Naimah, by the way, is a horticulturalist as well. So she has grown her own food, and she takes her food very seriously, and which I can really relate to because I've been told the same thing. And then also what was it is that she produces the most exquisite and delicious, incredible food that I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness, I think I'm gonna have to drive down to New York to go get a meal. So I was just really, really taken. And then beyond the aesthetics, I find that even with your writing has really moved me. And what I honor about what you do is that it's so authentic and it's so raw and it's so heartfelt, and it's this mixture of melancholy with optimism. And I find that, you know, I wish I had known about your profile, your IG handle, when I was going through my divorce, to be honest with you, because I think that it's filled with such rich information. And where it comes to spiritual support, to mourning and grief, to connecting with nature, to I mean, the list is endless. It goes on. And so if you are a divorcee going through a divorce, I really recommend that you actually, even if you do not have IG, Instagram, please go onto it, because you are missing out if you haven't seen Naimah's profile. So marhaban, I'm really excited to connect with you today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. I'm so delighted. And so we're going to start with a reading from Naimah's book. And this one is called My Wedding Ring. For a third of my life, you were with me. You accompanied me, always there, close, wrapped around my finger, rock solid. I expected to grieve. I thought it would be so hard to say goodbye. We were together for so long, and I loved you. I loved the way you sparkled in the light, the way you would always find me again, the way you could come back to life after taking a tumble, the way you beautified me. You were such a good companion. I thought I would cry. I thought that I would feel the weight of you not being here with me anymore, but I don't even miss you. It is as if you made it easy for me. You made it easy to let go. I thought I was holding on to you, but we were holding on to each other. And when I gently tugged you off my finger, you went so easily into a box without complaining. as if you knew it was time. And I thank you for that, my lovely companion, my wedding ring. Okay, so what I would like to know as a start is that if you could please tell us a bit more about yourself regarding the community work and the self-care packages that you do.
Sure. So, Bismillah, when I got divorced, it was really hard. And out of my close-knit group of friends, I was the only divorcee. I was the only one going through a divorce. And so, you know, it's hard for people to really know what you're going through if they haven't gone through something similar. And I think in an effort for my friends to like be there for me, they made a care package for me. And I really felt that it was very comforting for me to, have like they gave me a weighted blanket, which was like amazing. Like it provided so much somatic comfort. Um, and like there were just little things in there that really made me feel comforted. It provided me space to do the things that I loved. Like they gave me a set of calligraphy pens because they know that I love to write calligraphy. They gave me like face masks, canvases so that I could paint. And I found that to be one of the um, most like effective gifts that I was given during that time to really make me feel like I wasn't alone, even if people didn't know exactly what I was going through. And so to kind of pay it forward, what I did was um, I started providing care packages to especially divorcees, but not only them. It could be a new mom, it could be a widow, it could be, a child who, lost a parent. It could be a child of divorce. Um, and what I did was I provided care packages, and what people would do is like if they knew of somebody going through a divorce, they would just provide me with their address, the person's name, and like maybe a little bit of information about them. And I would mail them a care package. Um, and yeah, that started in 2020, I believe.
So what does your care package consist of?
So it depends. Like it's a variety of different things. Like it might have a journal in there, it might have a book, a bath bomb, lotion, different things, teas. Like it's just a bunch of random stuff. That's not so random, subhanallah, because a lot of times when people do get their package and they message me, they're like, I really was looking for this color hijab, and subhanallah, I got it. Or like I really love the chocolates you sent me. I don't know, but it's subhanallah, like you think it's random, you just put it together, but then when the person gets it, it's very personal to them. Another like a thing that I like to put in the care packages is jewelry that is like somewhat spiritual and inspirational. Like it might be a ring that just says salam on it, and just like so that ring is a reminder um, to like kind of look for peace in your life and to have that, just that little like symbolic reminder of like, okay, it's not just a ring, it's something like somebody wishes peace for me. Somebody's hoping for peace and praying for peace for me. Or it could be, just anything, but all of it is intentional. Even though it's, I don't know, most of these people I don't know.
How beautiful. That is so wonderful. Would you like to talk more about the community work that you do?
Um, so in terms of like community work, I just, volunteer my time when I'm available, and I like host gardening workshops periodically. Um, but that's pretty much it. I'm more of I'm a very low key person, I should say that.
Okay. Well, I would like to ask you a little bit about your own divorce, how it affected you. So I'm going to read something that I found off Instagram that you wrote. For three
Sure.
solid years, I grappled with grief, struggled with depression, and endured hardship. I felt like a broken glass vase in a bag. No matter how you carry it, the shards will create friction and cause pain. There were no quick fixes for me. It took prayer, gentleness, professionals, compassion, patience, community, nature, good food, and other medicine to heal. So my question from that would be, based on that quote, that how did this divorce process affect you during and after? And for you, what were the biggest challenges that led to this feeling that you just described over here?
Well, I mean, I think most divorces are difficult, especially when the marriage was, you know, um, like it was a long-term marriage, right? Because some people, get divorced in under a year, and it might still be very difficult, but it might not be a significant amount of time from their life. Um, but I was married, like I say, for a third of my life at the time that I got divorced. And so that was a huge period of my life that you know, had to kind of process, once the divorce happened. And so there was a lot of healing involved. Um, I could say that, most people understand that divorce is a possibility, right? Because 100% of divorce started with the marriage. And so we know divorce is a reality, and we know the statistics, even though you hope that it won't be you. But most people don't prepare themselves to be a single parent or a single mother. And so that was a huge part of like kind of grappling with that. Like, okay, maybe my marriage wouldn't work out, but I never thought I would kind of be a single mom, because that's totally different than like I don't have a partner, and I have to move on with my life. That's one thing, but now not having a partner to raise your children with is, it's very difficult. So when I say that there were no quick fixes, for me that meant like it wasn't just like, okay, I'm divorced now, boom, I accepted it, I'm moving on. It was definitely a slow and gentle process to like healing, to kind of like getting my footing again, to figuring out, you know, how I was going to be able to move forward in a healthy way, to raise my children, to have the energy for all of that. Like there's so many dreams that get crushed that you had for yourself in a divorce. There's so many things that you plan together as a family, with your partner, and those things kind of just like when you plan for the future, you plan it together. And so all of those things now were kind of, it was just gone. So you kind of have to grapple with like, well, how am I supposed to do this? Like how, you know? So all of that was difficult. Like there was pretty much no easy part in the divorce.
Mm-hmm. So how did you transition out of that state? Did you like, how did you approach your healing? Was it something that was organized and systematic, or did it just sort of happen organically?
I mean, so I do leave space in my life for spontaneity, but I was very intentional about my healing, like very, very intentional in terms of like nourishing myself spiritually, nourishing myself, physically, emotionally, seeking professional help. All of that um, was very intentional, immersing myself in nature, learning, trying to just support myself through it all very gently, very methodically, very slowly. It was a slow process. Some people, tell me like, oh yeah, I was good in, 6 months. For me, I didn't feel like really like I was where I felt like really, okay, I'm good now, until 3 years later. So everybody's different.
Wow, 3 years. Okay, when you say learning, what kind of learning do you mean?
Oh, like reading books, taking classes, kind of educating myself about um, what I went through, about divorce, about relationships, all of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you know? Because you said after 3 years, so how did you know that,
I
oh,
felt the shift. Yeah, I felt the shift in my body.
okay, okay. Would you say that it's when you feel like any sense of like grief has left? We're not so like not so triggered
I
by.
mean, to me, I wouldn't define it that way personally. Um, Everybody has like these different um, ways of categorizing things. I feel like um, grief is something kind of, you carry it, you carry it, and maybe it's not always at the forefront of your life. Maybe it takes like a back seat. Maybe it's not kind of tinting the way you see things, but it's there. Like if I do think about it and fixate about it, I will still feel sad. I'll still feel the grief of it. But for me, it was really like I felt the shift when I could say, like, I felt it in my body. Like I didn't feel down anymore. I felt like I had more energy. I was lighter. Um, I wasn't depressed anymore. And like I started to be able to experience joy again. So that was a big thing. Like before, I could feel happy. Like I say, I feel I always have that happiness inside. Like I can always access happiness, but joy is a bit different. And I didn't feel like I could really, access joy during that time. But I started to feel joy again, after the 3 years.
I'm going to read something on this topic from one of your posts, which is related to your horse riding, because I know that you love horses very much, and you also were going for horse riding lessons, right?
Yes.
Okay. I could gaze into their eyes and feel seen. I loved that I was finally being carried. Not only that, but I wasn't a burden, and they weren't intimidated by my strength. Horseback riding was an incredibly rich experience for me. I was learning, achieving a goal, stepping outside of my comfort zone, challenging my fears, building courage, healing, and had the space to be accepted as a whole woman bar none. So that was wonderful because that gave me some insight as to something that was part of your healing journey.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't
Yeah.
know. Would you like to uh, perhaps provide some kind of advice or steps to somebody who is literally feels like she's drowning and she's grappling with, okay, well, how do I pick up the pieces? Where do I start? What do I do? What can I do to make me feel just a little bit better?
Yeah. I mean, so it's a difficult question, and I think it's a really personalized one. But I think, like that, I went very slow. And for me, it was like, okay, what can I do? Because you want to be able to soothe yourself without using whatever you're using to soothe yourself to actually numb out the pain, right? And so sometimes it's a fine line because, you go from maybe watching one Netflix show to then binge watching, and now like that's consumed you, so you're not actually focused on your healing. Now you're just focused on not feeling the pain.
Like
So for me, I
distracting.
had like, yeah, so for me, I had like certain parameters for myself. Like I wasn't really big on TV before that, but I cut out TV completely. And this, like I said, this is completely personal. And the reason why I did that is because I didn't want to like binge watch or be consumed in that way. I felt like you, I felt like I do actually want to feel what I'm going through. So instead, like I nursed myself. I felt very cold when I got divorced. Like I felt cold in my limbs, in my body, internally. So I would take like really warm baths. I would make soups and drink like teas. And that was very, nourishing and soothing for me. I do recommend that people get a weighted blanket because um, touch is something that you lose in the divorce, right? And whether you have children or not, um, it's a different kind of touch. And having the weighted blanket kind of provides that like somatic stimulation, right? For your skin and for your body. And that kind of like, it's like a big cuddle, right? And the weight of it, like your body knows, your body senses that, okay, something is here now. And so that I find is helpful. It's helpful for other people. Other people have said like that has really helped me. I think it's important to get a therapist, even if you don't feel like you need it. Be able to process what you went through with somebody else. And some people choose to use a life coach or, a counselor. And I guess it's a personal decision, but it's really important that the person that you're working with is knowledgeable about, the work that they're doing with you. Specifically, also people that have went through an abusive relationship, um, they should seek out a professional that's specifically trained in, abuse, relational abuse when it comes to intimate partners, etc. Because the dynamics of healing in those circumstances are different than a relationship that kind of dissolved where there was no abuse. Maybe there was incompatibility or whatever the reason is. Um, and so for me, I also chose horseback riding because I do love horses, and I wanted another presence. And I specifically only rode male horses because I wanted masculine presence. I wanted healthy masculine energy to replace that gap. Um, and so it provided a really good healing space for me, a good positive dynamic, because that's another thing. A lot of times, specifically, me being a female married to a male, that, like I said, that masculine presence is now gone from my life. And a lot of people seek to replace it in unhealthy ways. And so another thing was that, like, I did not entertain any, I don't want to say male attention, but like I didn't entertain any romantic, um, I guess, connection for over a year. And that was very intentional, like not talking to men for the purposes of marriage, really just giving myself time to just be alone and to heal and to kind of figure things out without relying on, oh, I need this from another person. Um, because when you're going through something, traumatic, or when you're going through um, huge changes, um, the way you feel in that moment, even though it's difficult, is going to pass. And so the decisions that you make during that time, um, when it comes to partners, might not be it might not be sustainable. It might not be what you really want in the long run, but because you're going through something so traumatic in this moment, um, that's what we call rebounding. That other person's presence feels really good, you know, but it might not be actually, in actuality, what is good for you in the long term. So I kind of just left that space. Um, and I wanted to find other ways to get my needs met without it being, another male person, for lack of better words. I also, my therapist that I did somatic therapy with was male. And that was intentional because that was, a healthy male connection that wasn't romantic, but it still provided me with that, masculine energy, with that structure. And so, yeah,
Thank you. It's
it was
very
good for me.
I loved how with the horses, how you mentioned it's almost as if like the horse was holding space for you because you just looked into the horse's eyes and it made you cry. It's like being
Yeah,
so that really resonated with me because I do find that animals are extremely healing and
yeah.
that's beautiful.
And that's another thing. Like I said, when you get divorced, you don't have that touch anymore. You don't have that same partner to converse with, regularly. Like, how was your day? That's a huge empty space that's gone now. You don't have, eyes to look into anymore. And so, I felt like when I was, going horseback riding, that was like another being that could see me, that could hold me, that it wasn't haram to touch the horse, you know what I mean? And it wasn't, there was nothing wrong about it. So there was no guilt there associated with that.
Beautiful. Could you tell us a bit more about how your spirituality was affected by your divorce, both during and after?
Yeah, so during the divorce, I think so for me, marriage wasn't just like, oh, I have a partner. It was definitely, I took it very seriously, spiritually. And so for me, it was devastating because there was like a huge, um, I'm not really even sure what the right word is, but I kind of, I really prized that relationship. And for me, it was like I put my energy into it because for me, it was a means for me to attain closeness to God. And it was a means for me to kind of work towards heaven, work towards getting there. And so when I got divorced, I felt like, wow, like this is like, it felt like a door closed. It felt like a door to heaven closed. And that might sound dramatic, but that's literally how it felt to me. And so that was a lot of grieving as well. It was, I don't want to say I put all my eggs in one basket, but you know, how you said like to me, can you tell me about your community work? To me, um, in my personal life, my marriage was like the greatest community work I could do, the greatest spiritual work that I could do, the greatest, that was my marriage for me. Whereas some women would say, well, me being a mother is the best thing I could do, or me being a physician is the best thing I do. For me, being a wife, that space, and that honor and that responsibility was very weighty in my life. I took it very seriously. I enjoyed it. I loved it. And to me, it was attaining, like, I literally looked at it as like, this is me attaining closeness to God through marriage. And so when the divorce happened, it just felt like a huge door closed. And I felt like, well, now I'm kind of looking for another door to enter, to go through, like, and so it was like finding my way, and even in my book, I say like, God, I'm not lost, but I don't know where I'm going. And so, yeah.
Right. So if I'm hearing you correctly, that going through your divorce, it didn't make you turn away from God, because there are many people who go through a divorce and they go through some kind of spiritual crisis where they actually question their own faith, or they might even stop praying. But it sounds as if you were still turning towards Him and praying, and you still were cultivating a rich relationship spiritually.
Yeah. So I would say, so I can relate to people that go through something very seriously and then kind of like give up. I can relate to that because it was very difficult. So like holding on to the rope of your faith, holding on to the rope of Allah is difficult when you're going through trial and tribulation. Um, so I never stopped praying. Like I never took off my hijab, but that doesn't mean that I didn't struggle with like maybe my faith. Um, but that struggle didn't stop me from praying. It didn't make me turn away from my values, even though at times I felt it was very, very difficult.
Mm. There's a beautiful quote that I read in one of your posts that I'm going to share with our audience. The palms of my hands know all of my secrets from eavesdropping when I pray to God. Thank God my hands stay with me wherever I go. I love that. That's beautiful. So would you say that you present differently as a Muslima prior to divorce as opposed to after divorce? Has your
Um,
identifying as a Muslima, your sense of religion, everything, has it changed in any way?
so I don't know if I present differently, but I would say that my divorce made me way more compassionate, way more compassionate, way more understanding of not just the struggles of divorce, but like the struggles of life in general, like understanding that, you know, everybody goes through something. And whether we see it or not, whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not, um, each person's individual struggles are personal to themselves and they're difficult for themselves, even if they're not difficult for us, right? And, you know, divorce is something that I would say, um, I mean, my parents are married, but I was always curious about relationships and kind of how they work since I was very young. And divorce is something that since I was very young, I would pray that I never got divorced. And so when I say like it's like one of the biggest tests that ever happened to me, like it's no exaggeration. Like Allah tests you with that which you love. Like I loved marriage so much and I was intentional in my marriage. I tried my best, but in so many ways it humbled me and it tested me being divorced because you just realize that certain things happen in life and no matter how how much you try you can't avoid it and it further strengthens your reliance upon Allah, right? Because we don't know the future. So I would say in terms of my spirituality, I don't know that I present differently as a Muslim, like my dress hasn't changed, but I would say my heart has, you know, and and I think there's so many ways to kind of grow and get close to Allah. But um, if this was the path that was written for me, then I'm happy to take that journey.
Thank you. Okay, so are there things that during your divorce process that you feel that you lost, that you had to refocus on and regain? If you could tell us something about that.
Sure. I mean, when you get divorced, you lose a whole person, right? You lose a whole spouse, a partner, um, somebody to raise your children with, side by side. Um, and so there's so many things that you lose through that. And, you know, one thing I had to kind of process during that is like sometimes you don't realize um, how deep the wound is, right? Like, or how deep the loss is. So I remember one time we had a family event and I put on my dress and I couldn't button the top button on my dress. So I just put my hijab on and the hijab covered it. So it didn't matter. But then I was in the kitchen and I was, washing the dishes and um, I guess my hijab, I had moved it. And so my uncle saw that my button was open and so he closed it for me. Um, when I got home though, I couldn't take off my dress. And so that just made me cry because I realized that, well, if I was married, my husband would have buttoned my dress. And when I got home, he would have unbuttoned it for me.
Right. It's
But
something
now,
so small, but it means so much.
right. So it's like I cannot pay somebody to come and unbutton my dress. Right. So there's certain things you can pay for. You can pay for somebody to come deliver furniture to your house. Right. But you're not going to pay for somebody to come and take the garbage out, every Tuesday and Friday. You can pay for a massage at the spa, but you cannot pay for somebody to give you like a loving hug, a gentle caress, for somebody to just look at you and say, it's going to be okay. You can't pay for somebody to hold your hand, but you can pay for somebody to hold your groceries, and deliver them to your house. So all of those things are losses and you feel them as they come, you know? You can predict and say, okay, I'm not going to have this anymore. I'm not going to have that anymore. But you don't know the depth of the loss until you continue living without, you know?
Absolutely. SubhanAllah. May Allah make it easy for you and everybody else, all of us that have been through that. And are there certain things that you wish that you had known about about being a divorcee prior to going through a divorce?
Um, I would say that I felt like I knew that divorce was very, very difficult because I told you since I was very young, I would ask people, how is it going through a divorce? Very, very young. And I knew the pain of divorce um second-handedly. Like we saw it. We saw it with, family, with friends. And I would feel the pain of that person just not being there anymore, like at family functions or not being able to see people that you developed relationship with anymore because there was a divorce. So I understood that it was painful. I understood that there was loss associated with it. But I wouldn't say, I don't know that I could say there's something that I wish I knew per se. That doesn't really come to mind, but I do know that um, I'm kind of happy that I'm in the space that I'm in. I'm happy that I can speak about my experience and other people can benefit from it because I do know that there's so many people hiding.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's not just women, men hide too. They don't talk about, the pain of their divorce. They don't want to kind of share the difficulties of it. And I think that part of the stigma that we have in our communities, there's a responsibility on like the community to not be so judgmental, to be more compassionate, to hold space, to not be so isolating. But then there's also a responsibility on us as individuals to not isolate ourselves, to kind of also take up space, to also, share so that we can destigmatize this. So I think it's a two-way street. We work together, and a lot of people just don't know because they haven't gone through it, they haven't experienced it. So all they have is assumption. And when you share and when you um, kind of tell people, you check them a little bit and you educate them at the same time. Now, that doesn't mean that it's every individual's responsibility to educate other people on that. But I do think that, I've kind of taken on that role. It's not that this is what I wanted to do, but it just kind of happened that way. And I think that it's important to do that if you can. If you can, it's not something that's, obligated on each individual. But I think if you can, um, it's a heavy kind of test, and it's a heavy responsibility, and it's not easy. I always tell people sometimes people message me and they say, like, oh, you put things into words that I feel, but I can't explain. Or instead of, commenting on the post, people will message me and say, I'm too scared to comment publicly, but I went through this, you know, and we need more than one person talking, we need more than one person talking, and people need to know that their voice matters and that I'm scared too when I have to talk. I'm scared too when I, publish something or when I post something. It's very uncomfortable for me too. Vulnerability is vulnerability for a reason. It doesn't feel great for anybody, but there's strength there. There's healing there. There's so much in that space, and you need courage to do it. And the people doing it don't necessarily um, not feel scared, but they have the kind of the courage to take it on.
I think that you are so very brave to do so, and that everyone applauds you for doing so because, as you said, people want to, but they just cannot. They just cannot. And that's what we try to do here with And She Thrived, is to normalize the conversation because we see so much of healing in this sharing. And, it's a way of carrying another person. And it's also very cathartic to say what you're
Mhm.
feeling, right?
Yeah.
So linked to what you had just said before, I've read in your post that you receive messages continuously after you wrote your book and, based on the post that you put out there. So my question is that being in that position where you're receiving all of this information, this communication from people going through all kinds of things. How is that? What have you learned from that? What has this feedback taught you?
Well, I think first of all, we had a very atypical situation with COVID, right? And when COVID happened, relationships went through crises as well. And so that I got divorced before COVID, um, but it was just before COVID. So it's like I got divorced and it was like kind of like, oh, like I'm the only, not the only one, but it went from being like, okay, well, I'm the only one to like, wow, every other person is now getting divorced, And things, alhamdulillah, have slowed down a bit. But I think what it taught me was that, and it's something that I already knew, but I would say like it reaffirmed that everybody struggles in, romantic partnership, at least during some part of the relationship. It's not always rosy. There are rough patches. Um, and that all different socioeconomic statuses, all different people go through those issues. It's not just like, rich or poor or educated or uneducated. You know, it's something that humans struggle with. Um, it also taught me that, a lot of people that you think might have, perfect homes, many of them don't. Many people struggle. Um,
Yes, on
and
that note, you did mention quite a few times how people have these social media profiles where they look like this fantastic happy couple, and they're actually really on the brink of divorce. They're very unhappy, etc. And to not, you always say, don't judge from the outside. You have absolutely no idea what's going on behind closed doors.
yeah, and that's not to say that everybody that's a happy couple on social media, it's a
Right.
farce. That's not to say that at all. However, the thing is that when we see um, a lot of these posts are selling you a lifestyle, right? But it's not necessarily mirroring their life, right? And so, like, if I'm, you know, selling this hijab, I'm going to make it look really great, right? And I'm going to play it up because it's an advertisement ultimately, right? I'm selling you a product, and through that product, I I play it up or I accentuate the colors with the lighting and all of that stuff. Now, when I put the hijab on just to go outside of my house, it's not going to look as good as when I'm playing it up. You understand what I'm saying? So a lot of these influencers, their pages are advertisements. Really, that's what it is. They're selling you a lifestyle through a bunch of different products, and so that lifestyle has to look a certain way. Now, the story that you tell yourself in your head about that person is made up by you, right? They never said their life was that good. You did, because that's the
In the gap,
story that
right?
you filled in. And so I think that's where a lot of our pain comes from, through like social comparison. It's the story that we made up, not the story that we were told. Nobody said, oh, I have a happy marriage, but you deduce that from the picture of me standing next to my husband and smiling, right? This might have just been a good day. Or I might be trying to sell you my pretty dress. You know what I mean? And nobody's going to sell a pretty dress if they're not smiling. And so really, I just think, again, it's not, the point is not to look at couples and say, I bet you they're not really happy at home. The point is really to know that you should focus on yourself, and you should not use what you see like going on in other people's lives to make you feel worse about your own.
So how do you respond to these people that reach out? Do you say a prayer for them, or do you actually engage with them, give them advice? What is it that they need that we're able to do to fill that gap in some way?
Some people are just like sending thank yous. You know, they say, you know, I just want to thank you. And then they'll share part of their story and I'll engage them. Other people are like looking for something. So if they're like looking for a therapist or if they're looking for a counselor, then I might suggest, you know, a few references. Um, some people are just asking like a question and I might be able to answer it. Other people, you know, they might just vent a little bit and I might say a prayer for them or I might relate to them in some way. So everybody has something different that they're, you know, messaging me about or for, and I try to address it in you know, the best way that I can. I don't have like all the answers, and sometimes I just tell people that like I can't really help you with that. I don't know what to do, but maybe you could seek out, you know, resource, and I might share with them a resource,
Mhm.
you know.
There's something that you wrote that I found was so beautiful. Be careful about staying in dark places for too long. Even seeds rot when planted too deep in the soil. I found that very profound. And so, do you have any advice for other women considering a divorce or going through one right now? Because I know that
Um,
you had something to say about setting realistic expectations.
yeah, so the thing is that I wrote that the part that you just read well after divorce. And really, it applies to both. It applies to staying in relationships that are really suffocating you and like really taking everything out of you, but it also applies to like the grieving process. And sometimes, you know, in your pain, in the depression, in the grief, and all of that, you can kind of stay there for too long and it can be very unhealthy. And so I really think like you can't rush your healing, but you should encourage it. And so that's why I tell people like get a therapist, get, you know, a support group going, get certain things to anchor you in the process so that you don't isolate yourself and stay in that dark place for too long.
Okay.
And you can do that within a marriage too. You can do that within a marriage. You can say like, hey, listen, I'm not sure if I should be divorced or not, but I do know that I need support. And you can get a counselor and say like, okay, maybe my spouse doesn't want to go to counseling, but I can go to counseling myself first and kind of figure out what's going on with my life. You can build a healthy social group by reaching out to friends, by maybe, again, maybe you don't have friends, but maybe you were always interested in learning how to sew. So you take a sewing class, and in that sewing class, you find like minded people, and you're able to now build a, a social structure and social support for yourself. So those things are really important. You can do that within your marriage or without your marriage. You can do it in if you're in a healthy, you know, situation or if you're in an unhealthy situation. It's not exclusive to like married or divorced, you know, or, you know, I guess in a good space or like struggling. Um, that's open to all. But I just think that we do need to be careful about being in dark spaces for too long because it is suffocating and nothing thrives there.
And what I'm hearing from you is the importance of taking the initiative, because all of this that you're saying requires some kind of proactivity from the woman, as in taking responsibility, assessing where you are in your life, whether you are married, whether you are not married, and taking that step forth. You have to create that social network if you don't have it. I think that that's a very important point, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
And I think a lot of people think that they're helpless and they aren't. Like we are more capable sometimes than we think we are. And we have more access to things, especially like, and I'm speaking now, you know, in America where, you know, there's no war here, thank God, you know, in these, you know, typical, you know, first world setting, we have access to so much, right? Especially post COVID, where there's now access to free therapy and mental health resources, and it's destigmatized so much, because I remember being very young and how stigmatized, therapy and mental health was. It was highly stigmatized, both in the religious sector and the non-religious sector. But now that's really not the case anymore. And it's more accessible, it's more acceptable, it's more accepted. So we have so much. And it's really, a lot of times it's really to say, I want to heal. I want to feel better. I want to get my needs. And sometimes so many of these things don't happen because we stay quiet.
Right. Stay quiet, or maybe just blame circumstances or blame everything else rather than, okay, I'm going to do something about this to the best of my ability, right?
Yes, accountability is a big deal.
You said something else in a post that really struck me. You need to plan. This is the number one thing. Over and over again, every time a client comes to me thinking about getting divorced, I ask them, do you have a plan? The answer is pretty much always no. Then I ask, what will your life look like if you get divorced? And again, crickets. Did you say crickets? Like, what are crickets? Okay. Women, the same way you planned your wedding is the same way you need to plan your divorce. Be meticulous. The irony is that in my observation, men typically don't participate much in their wedding planning, but when it comes to divorce, he has a plan, even if he doesn't want it.
Yes.
That's good advice, right? Because women, we just kind of go along and, right. So anything you want to add on to that? What does it mean then to plan?
So the same way that women plan their weddings, they know where they're going to live, they know what they're going to wear on their wedding day, they have their registry prepared and how their apartment's going to look and what their new life, what they envision for their new life, is the same way that I think they should plan their divorce, in that they should know how they're going to support themselves. They should know where they're going to live. They should know, who will be around to help them. For example, if, something comes up and their child needs to be picked up from school, who's going to be there to kind of, be an emergency contact? All of those things, you should plan it. And I think the two biggest things when it comes to divorce, and women particularly, is that they don't know how they're going to support themselves, and they don't know where they're going to live. So people struggle with how they're going to support themselves financially. Particularly women, they have expectations but not a plan. And I want to say this, like, divorces typically are not amicable, and people need to understand that. Okay, especially if you're getting divorced because your spouse doesn't treat you well, you should not expect that a divorce, they will start treating you well. You should not expect justice from your divorce. So to think, like, a lot of times what I hear is like a woman will say, well, he'll have to pay me alimony and child support for the kids. And that's their financial plan. And that is a bad financial plan. Okay. And people may disagree with me, but I'm telling you right now, that is a bad financial plan. Because to rely on somebody that you're divorced from to support you for the rest of your life is not a good plan. You need to come up with some ways to get a career or educate yourself, to obtain a career, to start a business, whatever it is. You should seek financial independence. Relying on somebody else that you were once married to and now you're divorced to kind of be your financial support for the rest of your life is a really, really bad plan. And that's where a lot of people make bad decisions, because either they don't get the amount that they were expecting, even if it was their right to get that. A lot of things happen in divorce. Okay, so you may or may not get that amount, or that amount may not be consistent, and then you're in a jam. Or because, you know, this person can't financially support you well, the person that you were married to, and your parents might not be able to financially support you well, then you realize that, okay, well, my only viable option is to get into another marriage. And so that's how a lot of women find themselves, married again. Might not be exactly what they wanted, but it's something that they kind of needed to do to, have housing and to live. And that's why I say plan, because even if you want a divorce, even if you know that a divorce is right for you, that doesn't mean that you need to get divorced tomorrow. You can plan, okay? You can plan and say, you know, today I'm not happy. Today I don't want a divorce. But to get a divorce today is not practical, and it would harm me more than it would benefit me. But I can plan for that, provided that you're not in a dangerous situation, okay? Um, but yeah, a lot of planning that women do, or, dreaming and I guess fantasizing, is about, well, in the divorce, I'm going to get this amount of money. I'm going to keep the house. He's going to move out, and all of those things. And a lot of times it's just not the way it turns out. And they don't have a good understanding of the law because, most of us don't.
Yeah, that's very sensible and useful advice for sure. Is there anything else that you would like to say in closing, Naimah?
No, I think that we covered so much here. And again, I think it's really important that when you're going through a divorce, to really prioritize your relationship with God, to prioritize holding on to your values, to prioritize taking care of yourself in a wholesome way. Those are really, really important things. And that's what's helped me. It's not an easy journey. It's very difficult, but it's doable. It's doable. And when you kind of get to the other side and you get to a place where you feel um, like a lot of healing has taken place and you're not grieving, you're not as heavy, then you'll look back and say, I'm proud of myself. You'll look back and say, that was hard, but it enriched me. There's so much to gain from it. Now, that's not to encourage divorce in any way, but sometimes, it happens. And that's why I said, like, if it happens, if you choose it, if that's the right decision for you, um, the presence of pain doesn't mean you made the wrong choice.
Oh, absolutely. And I really echo what you said when sometimes for some people, divorce could be the best thing that's ever happened to them because it forces you to face certain sides of yourself that you never did before. It forces you to grow in ways that you could not even imagine.
Right.
And it makes you so resilient and you discover this inner strength. And as you say, it opens up like chambers to your heart of compassion that you never knew of before. So that was really profound.
And that's also if you do the work, right? Because
Absolutely right.
not everybody has the same experience with divorce. For some of them, divorce makes them more harsh. It makes them less compassionate. It makes them less grateful.
It's painful, right? Like who,
exactly.
Right. I think that's so important is that this is what we try to push here is the importance of taking responsibility, and irrespective of that other person's contribution to the failure of that marriage or whatever, that doesn't, there's always two to tango, right? There's always, even if we were enabling the situation in some way, but there's always some kind of something that we contributed to the marriage in some way. To take responsibility and to learn and grow and seek, because we don't want to hold on to resentment and bitterness, 10 years from now, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So thank you so much. It was such an honor, and I am definitely driving to New York to come for lunch or supper.
Yeah, you're welcome anytime. Come during the summer when the garden is lush.
I look forward to it, and perhaps we could do some gardening together. So thank you very much, and we hope to connect with you again, inshallah. Be well.
Assalamu alaikum.
ورحمة الله وبركاته.